You're just too soft, Dara. You don't have that hunger, that fire that separates the great from the average. Those were the words that shattered the quiet world I thought we'd built together. No shouting, no dramatic breakup. Just that a diagnosis delivered with surgical precision like a trainer critiquing poor form. I remember staring at him, the man I loved for 4 years, wondering when my warmth became his weakness. My name is Dara Wallace, 29 years old. For most of my adult life, I thought being dependable was enough, showing up working hard, being kind. But apparently kindness doesn't count as currency in Ronnie's new world. It all started with Apex Fitness. A sleek glass fortress with steel walls and an army of mirror-gazing disciples. Ronnie joined it to push himself, he said. At first I was proud. He'd always cared about fitness, but this time it felt different. He began talking about someone named Mia Sanders, his new personal trainer. At dinner, between bites of grilled chicken and sweet potato, her name kept slipping out like a secret prayer. Mia says my recovery's trash because my protein timing's off. Mia says discipline is freedom. Mia says comfort kills ambition. At first I laughed. Does Mia also say humans are allowed to have dessert? He didn't even crack a smile. Dara, that mindset is exactly why people stay average. Average. The word landed harder than he intended, maybe even harder than he realized. I'd always believed our relationship was built on balance, his energy, my calm. But now it felt like he was pulling away, like my very presence slowed his stride. The change was slow, like erosion. He started labeling our dinners as macros, not meals. Our weekends stopped being about movies and markets. They became recovery sessions. Every conversation was a sermon on optimization. He'd look at me across the table, not with affection, but with analysis, assessing my habits, my posture, even how long I slept. One night I cooked seared salmon with roasted asparagus, something he'd once requested weekly. He walked in after his alpha conditioning session. Shirt soaked in sweat eyes, wired from adrenaline. He sniffed the air and frowned. What's the fat content on this? It's salmon, Ronnie. It's healthy. Healthy isn't a macro, he said already, pulling out his phone to log something. Mia says if you're not tracking, you're just guessing. I stared at him. We used to eat food, Ronnie, not numbers. He gave a small, pitying smile, the kind you give to someone who doesn't get it. It takes a level of discipline, Dara, you wouldn't understand. You've never had to push. He didn't notice that my hand trembled as I set down the pan, or maybe he did, and didn't care. That night I lay awake beside him. He was scrolling through his phone, laughing softly at something. I turned my head just enough to see a photo on his screen. Mia sweat slick and smiling mid-lift. His comment, "Power looks good on you." Something small inside me broke, but I stayed silent, because I still believed silence could fix things. I'd always been the quiet one, the listener, the anchor. But that night my silence started to feel like consent. The next morning I watched him dress. Every movement was purposeful, efficient, like he was auditioning for a commercial about discipline. I asked carefully, "Are you and Mia close?" He paused only for a second, just enough for truth to flicker across his face. "She's my trainer, Dara. Don't make this something it's not." "Then why do you talk about her more than us?" His jaw tightened. "Because she gets it." He left before I could reply. The door closed with that same soft finality that later became familiar, not loud enough to start a fight, but quiet enough to end one. I spent the day replaying his tone in my head, because that's what I do. I analyze, I overthink, I try to understand the hurt before I react to it. By evening, I decided maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I just missed us. So I planned something simple, sushi at the new place downtown, something that might remind him of normal life, of laughter and light. I drove to Apex Fitness to surprise him. The place was buzzing, steel-clanging, techno-pulsing air, thick with cologne and ego. Through the glass wall, I spotted him instantly. And her, Mia. She was spotting him on the bench press, her hands steady on the bar. He racked the weight, and she leaned in, whispering something that made him laugh. Too close. Too familiar. Her palm lingered on his chest, and he didn't move it away. I didn't go inside. I just stood there, watching through the window, invisible. He looked alive in a way he hadn't around me for months, and that hurt more than anything. That night I chopped vegetables harder than necessary, the knife thudding rhythmically against the board. When he came home, I didn't look up. "We need to talk," I said. "Okay," he replied, tone flat, like I was a coworker asking for a performance review. I turned to face him. "I stopped by Apex today. He froze for just a second, then recovered. Why I was going to surprise you. Dinner plans. I let the sentence hang. You didn't see me, but I saw you. With Mia. His chin lifted slightly defensive, not ashamed. And are you sleeping with her? He laughed once low and dismissive. God, Dara, you always twist everything. Mia's the kind of woman who pushes me. You wouldn't get that. Pushes you. My voice cracked. Into what arrogance? That's when he looked at me like I was something small, something beneath the vision of greatness he'd built in his head. You're comfortable, he said quietly. You play it safe. You're a solid 6 out of 10 on your best day. The words didn't hit all at once, they seeped in slow and poisonous. 6 out of 10. Like I was an assignment graded by his new religion. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him see. But instead I just whispered, I thought love wasn't a competition. He smiled, soft cruel. Love is easy. Excellence isn't. He walked out of the kitchen, shaking his head. I stayed behind, staring at the untouched plates of food. The same salmon, the same asparagus, suddenly tasting like failure. When I finally moved, it wasn't anger that guided me. It was clarity. I washed my hands, wiped the counter, and stared at my reflection in the black microwave door. I didn't see weakness. I saw someone exhausted from trying to prove her worth to a man addicted to mirrors. That night, he slept soundly beside me, breathing deep and even. I lay awake wide-eyed until dawn. By morning, my decision was made. If he wanted someone who'd push him to the edge, he could have her, but I would not stay to watch him fall. If he needed a 10, I whispered into the empty air he'd have to find her somewhere else. The next morning, sunlight cut across our apartment like a blade, sharp, unforgiving. Ronnie was already gone, probably at Apex for his dawn grind. His side of the bed was cold, the sheets crisp and perfectly tucked, like no one had ever slept there. It hit me how easy it must have been for him to erase me from his routine. I got up, made coffee, and stared at the mug in my hands. It was chipped, a small crack near the handle from when he'd accidentally dropped it last year. He'd kissed my forehead then and said, "Don't worry, I'll fix it." He never did. The mug still worked fine, just not for him anymore. That morning I decided I wouldn't ask for an apology. I just wanted honesty. But honesty, I was about to learn, was the one thing Ronnie no longer had the capacity for. When he came home that night, his aura filled the doorway before he did. Sweat glistened on his neck. His shirt clung to every muscle like armor. He didn't greet me. He went straight to the fridge, grabbed his protein shake, and gulped it down like medicine. "Hey," I said quietly. He glanced over, distracted. "Hey, what's up?" I took a breath. "Do you even see me anymore?" He frowned, confused. "What kind of question is that? You talk to me like I'm one of your stats. You look through me like I'm invisible. You spend more time quoting Mia than you do speaking to me." He rolled his eyes, muttering, "Here we go again." I stood meeting his gaze squarely. "I just want to know what changed, Ronnie." He set down his shake with a deliberate clink. "You stopped wanting more." "What does that even mean?" "It means you're content with mediocrity. You coast. You don't push." He gestured around the apartment, at our modest furniture, the framed photos, the life we built together. "This, all of this, it's fine. But fine isn't good enough anymore." Something inside me snapped quietly like the soft pop of glass under pressure. "Do you even hear yourself?" I asked. "This isn't a TED Talk, Ronnie. This is our life." He crossed his arms, jaw flexing. "I can't explain it to you, Dara. You just don't get it. You don't have that drive. Because I don't live at the gym." He laughed, not kindly, but in disbelief. "Because you don't live for anything anymore." I froze. "I live for peace, for joy, for the things we used to have." "Peace," he repeated like it was an insult. "Peace is what people settle for when they've given up." I swallowed hard. "And obsession is what people call purpose when they've lost balance." His eyes darkened. "That's exactly what I mean, that mindset. That softness. You'll never understand what it's like to push past limits." Then came the words that would replay in my head for weeks. "I need a real woman who pushes her limits, not someone content being a 6 out of 10. It was like he'd slapped me, except worse because it was calculated. He said it without raising his voice, like he truly believed it was a statement of fact. I felt the air leave my body. "A 6 out of 10. Don't twist it," he said, exasperated. "I'm just being honest." Honest. The word dripped with cruelty, disguised as truth. He didn't want honesty. He wanted superiority. "You really think worth can be measured in numbers?" I asked softly. He shrugged. "Everything can. Data doesn't lie." That's when I realized he wasn't speaking to me anymore. He was quoting someone. He was quoting her. Silence filled the space between us. Not the comfortable kind we used to share, the one that came with familiarity and warmth. This silence was brittle, like the air before a storm. I turned away from him and picked up the chipped mug from the counter. It trembled slightly in my hand. "Remember this?" I asked. "You said you'd fix it." He looked at it uninterested. "It's just a cup, Dara." "No," I said, "it's a reminder." He frowned. "Of what?" I met his eyes, voice steady. "That you only fix what makes you look broken." For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe guilt. But then he hardened. "You're being dramatic." I nodded slowly. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm finally seeing clearly." He sighed, already done with the conversation. "I'm not doing this right now. I've got an early session." And just like that, he walked out again. Door closing softly, always softly. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from me. It was strange how absence could take up so much space. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Instead, I felt hollow, like I'd already been erased. So I reached for something else control. Not over him, but over myself. I opened my laptop, found a new apartment listing, and sent an inquiry before I could talk myself out of it. Then I packed one small suitcase. Just essentials, a few clothes, my journal, the chipped mug. Everything else could stay here in the shrine he'd built to his perfection. As I zipped the suitcase shut, I caught my reflection in the dark window. Tired eyes, mascara smudged, shoulders trembling. But beneath that exhaustion, I saw something fierce awakening, something steady. I whispered into the dim room, "If he needs a 10, he'll have to find her somewhere else." And for the first time in months, I smiled, not because I was happy, but because I knew I was finally done auditioning for love. Moving out wasn't the dramatic storm I once imagined it would be. No shouting, no tears, no desperate pleas. Just quiet, deliberate motion, the kind that comes when grief finally burns itself out. I waited until Sunday morning. Ronnie always did alpha endurance on Sundays, 2 hours of cardio weights and ego at Apex Fitness. By 7 a.m., his water bottle and gym bag were gone. By 7:05, I was on my knees packing the pieces of a life that no longer fit me. The sound of cardboard flaps folding was oddly comforting. Every taped box felt like a sentence closing. I didn't take much, just the things that were undeniably mine. My books, my notebooks, my clothes, the old hiking boots from the trip where he'd once said he felt most alive. Everything else, the blender, the supplements, the mirrored scale, could rot in the temple he worshipped. I looked around our apartment one last time. It didn't feel like a home anymore. It looked like a showroom, sterile, sculpted hollow. The kind of place that photographed well but never felt warm. Maybe that was the perfect metaphor for him. I left the key on the counter beside the half-empty jar of peanut butter, his post-workout ritual, and whispered a quiet goodbye that no one would ever hear. My new apartment was smaller, older, quieter. The kind of place where the walls had texture and the windows rattled when it rained. It smelled faintly of jasmine from the neighbor's balcony. The first night I slept on a mattress on the floor surrounded by boxes and silence. But for the first time in months, the silence didn't suffocate me. It protected me. When I woke up, sunlight spilled across the floorboards, warm and unfiltered. No alarm, no protein shakes, no sound of iron weights clanging, just me breathing. I made coffee and drank it slowly without logging it into an app. Still the ache lingered. You don't just walk away from love, even toxic love, without bleeding a little. There were moments when I almost texted him just to see if he'd notice I was gone. But every time my finger hovered over his name, I remembered that night his voice calling me a 6 out of 10. His eyes scanning me like data. His smile when he told me I lacked fire. And I'd lower my phone again, breathing through the temptation like a craving I'd already decided not to feed. 3 days later, I found myself wandering near the park after work. Couples jogged past, kids laughed, dogs chased each other, normal life. I sat on a bench watching them and realized how small my world had become under his control. Every decision, every thought had been filtered through what he would approve of. I whispered almost to myself, I don't need to be optimized. I just need to exist. That night, while scrolling through local listings, something caught my eye. Intro to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. First class free. I laughed out loud. Ronnie would have mocked it rolling around on a mat with strangers for fun, but that was reason enough for me to go. The dojo was nothing like Apex. No mirrors, no neon slogans, just mats, quiet focus, and the faint scent of sweat and humility. The instructor, a calm man in his 40s, smiled as he handed me a white belt. Here we don't care how strong you are, he said. only how you breathe when you're losing. I didn't understand it then. But by the end of that first class, when a girl half my size submitted me in under a minute, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. There was no competition, no score, no measuring tape, just balance, leverage, breath. Every fall came with a lesson. Every defeat made me lighter. By the second week, I wasn't thinking about Ronnie during class. By the third, I'd stopped thinking about him afterward. It's funny how healing often hides in the mundane. I started sleeping better, cooking without guilt, saying no to things that drained me. Some nights I'd walk home from training sweaty and exhausted, and I'd look up at the city lights, the same ones that once reminded me of him, and they felt different, like they belonged to me again. One evening, I found an old photo of us, the hike at Grey Rock Peak. We were covered in dust, laughing arms, wrapped around each other. I almost deleted it, but instead I slipped it into a drawer. Not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder of how even good memories can become poison in the wrong hands. A month passed before his name resurfaced. It came from a friend Ben, one of Ronnie's gym buddies, who'd stayed friendly with both of us. "Hey, Dara, just giving you a heads up. Saw Ronnie and Mia at Whole Foods. It was weird." She looked terrified. He was lecturing her about peanut butter, like actually scolding her over the label. I read the message twice. The image was absurd, yet disturbingly familiar. Ronnie dissecting someone's worth over a jar of protein spread. Same script, new audience. I typed back, "Thanks, Ben. I'm fine," he replied. "I figured. Just thought you'd want to know." I didn't really, but part of me felt an uncomfortable mix of pity and relief. Pity for Mia, the new 10. Relief that it wasn't me anymore. Weeks later, another friend reached out, Lisa from our old hiking group. She met me for coffee, eyes wide with unease. "Dara, I saw them at a barbecue. It was bad. He was talking down to everyone." Mia just sat there, barely said a word. "She's lost so much weight, Dara. I think he's, I don't know, breaking her." I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the steam rise. "People like Ronnie don't change," I said quietly. "They just find new mirrors." Lisa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You got out just in time." I nodded, smiling faintly. No, I woke up just in time. That night, as I locked my apartment door, I realized something profound. Leaving hadn't been the end of my story. It had been the beginning of a quieter one. No grand revenge, no comeback speech, just peace. A peace earned, not given. I poured myself tea, set the chipped mug on the windowsill, and looked out at the rain shimmering on the glass. The world outside was still noisy, sirens, laughter, life. But inside my little apartment, everything was finally still. "Peace isn't the absence of noise," I whispered. "It's the absence of needing to be heard." And for the first time, I realized I wasn't missing him. He was missing this. It started with a whisper, a name dropped into a conversation I hadn't meant to overhear. At the cafe near my office, two women in gym gear were gossiping, not cruelly, just curiously. The guy from Apex, the one who calls himself King Mode. I heard he got banned. My stomach tightened before my mind caught up. King Mode. That had been Ronnie's handle on social media. I stirred my coffee slowly, pretending not to listen, but every word landed like a stone. Apparently, there'd been an incident. Someone said he'd thrown a dumbbell. Another said he'd screamed at a client. The name Mia came up once quietly. And suddenly I wasn't hearing strangers anymore. I was hearing ghosts. That night when I got home, I opened my phone. Out of pure human weakness, I typed his name into the search bar. His once polished fitness page was gone, deleted. The king had fallen from his throne, and no one seemed surprised. I sat back, heart pounding. I should have felt vindicated. I should have smiled even just a little. But all I felt was tired. Tired for her. For the girl who believed his promises the same way I once did. I remembered how he used to say, "Pressure makes diamonds." Now it seemed that pressure had crushed everything around him instead. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a message from Rachel, one of Mia's friends, someone I barely knew. "Hey, Dara, this might be strange, but could we talk?" Curiosity prickled, mixed with unease. When we met, Rachel looked like she hadn't slept. Her tone was hesitant, her voice low. "I shouldn't even be telling you this, but I think she's in trouble." "Mia?" I asked. "Yeah." Ronnie. He's controlling everything. Her schedule, her phone, who she talks to. It's like she's disappearing. Rachel looked down at her hands. "She told me once that you were the calmest person she'd ever met, that you used to make him laugh. She said she missed that version of him." The words hit like a bruise I didn't know was still there. "Rachel." I said softly, that version of him doesn't exist anymore. Her eyes filled with tears. She's scared, Dara. He's not right. She tried to leave once, and he locked her out of their place with her things still inside. I sat in silence for a long moment, fighting the instinct to react, to fix, to help. But I knew better now. That path was a trap disguised as compassion. I'm sorry she's going through that, I said finally. But I can't be the person who saves her. He made sure I barely survived my time with him. I won't go back into that fire. Rachel nodded, though her eyes pleaded for more. I understand, she whispered. I just didn't know who else to tell. We parted with a hug that lingered, two women both haunted by the same man in different ways. That night I dreamed of the mountain Grey Rock Peak. In the dream, Ronnie and I were back at the summit, but the sky was darker this time. When I turned to look at him, it wasn't Ronnie standing beside me. It was Mia, pale, hollow-eyed, clutching her phone like a lifeline. When I reached for her, she whispered, "You got out. Why didn't you warn me?" I woke up drenched in sweat. The city outside my window was quiet and different. I sat there for hours, watching the lights flicker like distant campfires, and I realized how survivors carry guilt even for storms they didn't cause. Weeks passed. The messages from mutual friends slowed, then stopped, until one night my phone lit up again, an unknown number. Dara, it's Sarah. I don't know if you remember me from Mia's book club. I remembered vaguely. Sarah had been kind, quiet, thoughtful. Her next words made my blood run cold. I saw her today, at a cafe. She was wearing sunglasses, but when she took them off, she had a black eye. She said it was an accident, but, Dara, I don't think it was. My breath caught in my throat. Sarah's voice trembled. She kept looking over her shoulder. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm really worried. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. It wasn't shock, it was recognition. That same low-grade terror I'd once lived with, not fear of being hit, but fear of never being heard. Thank you for telling me, I said quietly. Please just make sure she knows she's not crazy. That's all you can do. When the call ended, I sat in the dark staring at my reflection in the window. For the first time in months, I felt something dangerously close to anger, not at Ronnie, but at the version of me that used to think love could heal a man like him. The next evening, I stayed late at the dojo. We practiced escapes, learning how to breathe under pressure, how to use calm as leverage. Every movement felt poetic. Every fall had meaning. When class ended, my instructor clapped me on the shoulder. You've changed, he said. You used to move like you were apologizing. Now you move like you own your space. I smiled faintly. Maybe I finally learned that peace doesn't mean shrinking. A few days later, another message came, not from Rachel, not from Sarah. An email. No name in the address. Just a jumble of letters and numbers. Subject line, you were right. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. The first line was enough to make my pulse quicken. Dara, it's Mia. Please don't delete this. The words that followed were frantic, desperate, and all too familiar. She talked about fear, about being isolated, about realizing too late that love wasn't supposed to feel like walking on glass. Every paragraph was soaked in regret and panic. I don't know what to do. He's watching everything. This is the only email he doesn't know about. I thought I was strong, but I'm not. I can't breathe here. Please, Dara. Please help me. My eyes blurred as I reached the end. You warned me. I didn't listen. I should have. You're the only one who will understand. I sat there frozen, not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much, and I knew caring could kill you if you weren't careful. I closed the laptop and let out a long, shaking breath. Somewhere in another apartment, another woman was living my old life, the same silence, the same isolation. But this time I wasn't the one trapped inside it. Her empire's collapsing, I whispered to the empty room, and I can't be her rescue plan. Still the guilt lingered like smoke, because I knew deep down that every kingdom Ronnie built would end the same way, with someone else paying the price for his crown. I didn't sleep that night. The glow from my laptop stayed on the entire time, Mia's email open on the screen like a ghost that refused to fade. Every line replayed in my head, her pleas, her panic, the echoes of things I'd once said myself but never dared to write. I thought it was passion, but it's control. I can't breathe here. Please, Dara, save me. That last line sat heavy in my chest, because she didn't mean help me. She meant replace me. Step into the fire so I can step out. And I couldn't do it. Not again. Not ever. I sat on the edge of my bed, hands trembling over the keyboard. The city outside was quiet, a rare, windless calm that made the night feel suspended in glass. Somewhere 2 blocks away, a siren wailed briefly, then faded. I opened a blank reply. For a long time, the cursor just blinked, a small pulsing reminder that I had a choice. The old me, the fixer, the caretaker, the empath would have sent comfort, would have driven across the city, knocked on the door, and begged Ronnie to be reasonable. But I wasn't her anymore. I had built peace out of ashes, and I wasn't going to burn it down for closure that wasn't mine to claim. I took a breath and began to type. To M. Sanders, subject, you were right. Mia, I read your message twice. Once with my heart, once with my head. The first time I felt everything you wanted me to feel: guilt, pity, the urge to help. The second time I saw it clearly: you don't need saving. You need to wake up. You said Ronnie's strength drew you in. I understand. It drew me in too, but you mistook control for confidence and noise for power. What you're living now isn't love, Mia. It's worship of someone who only loves mirrors. You wanted a king. You got one. I can't be the rescue you're looking for, because rescuing you means walking back into the cage I already escaped. You were right about one thing: I do understand you. That's why I know you'll never find peace until you stop asking others to grant it. I hope you choose freedom. But my peace is not a negotiation. Dara. I read it once, twice. It didn't feel cruel. It felt final. Then I hit send. The sound of the mouse click echoed louder than it should have, like a door closing in an empty hallway. I closed the laptop, powered off my phone, and sat in the stillness that followed. For a long time, I stared at my reflection in the dark window. Outside the city pulsed headlights, rain fragments of other people's stories moving on without me. Inside, I felt something deep and rare. Not happiness, not triumph, peace. Days passed, no reply, no calls, only silence, which for once didn't scare me. At the dojo, my instructor announced I'd earned my blue belt. He tied it around my waist, his hands steady. Congratulations, he said. You don't fight like someone running away anymore. I smiled, breath steady. I'm not, I said. I'm standing still. That night, walking home under the drizzle, I stopped at a streetlight. Across the intersection, a couple argued something small, probably trivial. The woman's voice cracked. The man rolled his eyes and turned away. And for a second, I saw myself years ago, trying to make a man listen who only wanted to hear himself. The memory didn't sting anymore. It just passed. At home, I found a letter slipped under my door. No name, just a single sheet of paper folded neatly. Inside was one sentence written in shaky handwriting. I left him. No signature, but I knew who it was. I stood there in silence, the paper trembling slightly between my fingers. Then I folded it back and set it on the counter beside my chipped coffee mug. I didn't text her, didn't call, didn't respond. Some stories don't need a sequel. Some endings are sacred in their quietness. Weeks later, I hiked Grey Rock Peak again, alone this time. The trail was the same, but everything felt different. The air was sharp, the sun unfiltered. At the summit, I stood where we once stood together, Ronnie and me, and looked out over the endless stretch of sky. Last time I'd felt small beside him. This time I felt infinite without him. I closed my eyes, letting the wind sting my cheeks, and whispered into the horizon. You said I wasn't built for greatness. You were right. I was built for peace. And peace, I finally understood, was far rarer than greatness would ever be.